Got another big time fight at flyweight, and listen, flyweight never die. I'm really excited for this one. We get, don't blink, I'll wink. Kai Kara-France taking on Brazil's Rogerio Bontorin. And for Bontorin, you look at the guy's record, super impressive. I mean, 16-2 so far. He did lose his last fight, but when you're talking level of competition and you're losing fights to Ray Borg, where he just totally got outclassed by Ray Borg in that fight and taken down the whole time, listen, it is what it is. If you know Rogerio Bontorin, he has decent boxing combinations, but mainly he's known for his jiu-jitsu. The guy is an absolute killer on the mat. He's a national champion and state champion in jiu-jitsu, and you can see that from his fights. And if you want to go back, I mean, his UFC debut against Magomed Bibulatov, the takedowns from Bibulatov were absolutely insane. I mean, there was one where Bontorin threw a kick and Bibulatov, like, flipped him around. It was amazing. Magomed, he loses 2 fights. See you later. You're gone. I wish he was still around, but Bontorin wins that one by split. He beats Raulian Paiva in a fight where, listen, Bontorin was starting to swell up around his eye. Paiva had that disgusting cut where his eyebrow kind of just evaded him, and that was the end of the fight. The doctor ended it. Bisping was upset, but they showed it. It was gross. So Bontorin takes this fight. The weird thing about Bontorin is the fact that, listen, the Kai Kara-France fight is great. He was supposed to fight Manel Kape back in, August? And the fight fell out because Bontorin hurt his ankle. And that's the other thing. He's out due to an ankle injury. He's been away for about a year since losing to Ray Borg terribly. Like, Borg just totally outclassed him. For Kai Kara-France, since he's come into the UFC, very high-level competition, 5 on in. Paiva, split decision win. Mark De La Rosa loses to Moreno, beats Tyson Am, loses to Brandon Royval. And it was a fight of the night, and it ended in the second round. How crazy is that?
Absolutely wild. Like, Kai Kara-France, if you just want an exciting fight, tune in to see him fight, because it doesn't matter who he's going to go out there against. He is a good example of level of competition does really matter for him, because I do think he can beat the guys in the top 5 on his best day, but I truly do believe, like, Rogerio Bontorin could go out there and completely outclass Kai Kara-France, and I honestly wouldn't be that surprised, because, again, you talk to the level of competition. He's beaten guys who he should beat in the UFC, and then you look at his losses. Okay, you lost to Brandon Moreno in a phenomenal fight that, let's be honest, it was a really close fight that a lot of people did think Kara-France won. And the Bontorin fight, not the Bontorin fight, in his last outing, he looked good, but against Royval, sorry, I forgot his name, he drops Royval, first strike he throws. Royval drops him, first strike he throws. An absolute back and forth brawl. But again, he's lost to Brandon Royval and Brandon Moreno in the UFC, 2 of the top-ranked fighters. And then you look at his other UFC wins. Tyson Nam, a very good fighter, but somewhat one-dimensional in his approach. Mark De La Rosa, who, again, a good fighter, but I would argue he just kind of goes out there and wrestles. He's not the most well-rounded guy. And that's my point with Kai Kara-France. When he does fight the well-rounded guys who can really mix it up, he struggles. And it's weird because he comes from city kickboxing. You would expect a very kick-heavy attack. I would say he's one of the more boxing-heavy fighters from that gym. He goes out there, really likes to go to the body. We were talking about that earlier. And he's not at the Piotr Jan level of, I'm going to get my opponent hurt, then dig to the body to really try to wear them down. But it is something he likes to do in combination if he's able to get his opponent up against the cage. And he was doing a decent job with that against Brandon Moreno. But the thing with Moreno is he never gets tired. If fights were 10 rounds, Brandon Moreno would be undefeated. And against Kai Kara-France, you could tell the output was starting to get to Kara-France. The strikes were starting to land. And the weird thing for Kara-France, defensively, he's not that great. And you look at everyone else at city kickboxing, okay, other than Dan Hooker, for the most part, they do a really good job at getting out of the way of strikes, whereas Kai Kara-France, he's so aggressive that sometimes he does walk into his opponent's strikes, and it's just going to accentuate that power. Now, against Bontorin, it might not affect him just because the striking isn't there, but I do think when he does fight the Royvals again, when he does fight the Morenos again, some of those top-level guys in the division, I do think it's going to be a problem, because here's a great example. You're a big Askarov guy. Askarov is the fighter who is made to beat Kai Kara-France. Like, he can mix up his wrestling with his striking and really do everything. And that's what worries me for Kara-France moving forward. Although, I'll admit, I do like the foundation of his game.
I'll give you a second to kind of just slow yourself down. Slow your brain down.
I need to.
Kai Kara-France, very good defensive wrestling. We've seen 90% takedown defense in the UFC. We've seen the fact that, and this is a stat that you're going to see pop up, it's the third one that pops up out of all of them, is the fact that his strike differential, it's pretty good. It's 0.16 or 1.16 strikes landed per minute to strikes absorbed per minute. But it's 5.16 minus 4. Like, you're still taking a lot, and he even has 66% defense, but man, that's tricky. And the level of competition is something we talked about. Losses to Tatsumitsu Vada, very good fighter over with Ryzen. A loss to Pantoja on The Ultimate Fighter. A loss to Mark Striegel that we saw in the UFC. Like, the losses, even Dana Batgarel that we have in the UFC now, like, there's losses to good fighters, and I know there's 9 of them on his record, but there's also 21 wins, so take it for what it's worth. For Bontorin, though, very good boxing, very, very good jiu-jitsu, and he can work the takedowns himself. And I know in the UFC for Bontorin, too, you look at it, I mean, he has the win over Gabriel over on Contender Series, then he beats Magomed Bibulatov, then he has a fight against Paiva, where, again, it's kind of tricky, but he has the takedowns. His defensive wrestling doesn't have to be that great because he's so good at jiu-jitsu. And his striking's not terrible. It is at a negative and his defense isn't great. But, yeah, well, that's probably the reason why I'm taking Kai Kara-France. It's the fact that his striking defense isn't that great. And again, Bontorin, very good at jiu-jitsu, but if you don't have striking defense against a primary kickboxer who has good defense or good wrestling defense, it's tough to go out there and win. We saw him eke out a split decision over Bibulatov. I just don't see it in this fight.
No, I agree. He does lack the transition, which is the wrestling. And if Bontorin was a better wrestler, if he did have, let's say, like a collegiate background, he'd be a nightmare to deal with in the UFC because you do look at his ground game and just how dangerous he is. And we talked about Jake Matthews earlier, another grappling-heavy fighter, but he doesn't go for a lot of submissions. Bontorin does not have that issue. If he does get you to the mat, he is going to fish and go for submissions, but he's not going to jump on anything to really give you the opportunity to get back up to your feet. And that's what you like about him. He's not, and I always bring up Gilbert Burns from the first round of Tyron Woodley. He hasn't fully mounted. He probably could sit the last minute of the round just in full mount and get a little bit of offense off. Instead, he jumps for a triangle to try to finish it immediately. If you do go for those big actions, sometimes it gives your opponent enough space to get back up to their feet. But Bontorin, I don't think will have that issue in this fight. I am curious, and I'd love to get your take on this. Do you think he pulls guard at any point?
I think he will, and the other thing that kind of plays a bit of an X factor in here, and either look into it as much as you want or don't, and it'll probably be a conversation for after the fight more so than before. How's that ankle injury going to affect him in this one? I mean, you had a fight against Manel Kopp, and listen, people are down on Kopp, and I get it. Manel Kopp fought like Jairzinho Rosenstruik and lost to Gone, where we're just not doing anything. I mean, Manel Kopp, you expected the output. You expected the boxing. You just didn't do anything against Pantoja. People are down on him.
Pretty hard UFC debut, though, to be completely fair.
And Kopp's a very good fighter if you watch him over with Ryzen. So you know how good he is. For Bontorin, you had a fight like that against what? An upper echelon guy. Kai Kara-France is too, but that's it. I mean, how good's Bontorin and how does he adjust in a fight like this? I just don't know. I look at the votes on Tapology. Kind of go through these for us, Matt.
So we've got at 1,283 votes on Tapology. Bontorin is at 26% of the votes, with Kai Kara-France at 74%. And honestly, that is a little bit interesting because Kai Kara-France, he's not Thomas Almeida, but his record is a little Thomas Almeida-y.
Big name, too. That's a thing.
Exactly. He's a big name. He has good wins in the UFC, but he doesn't have a great win yet. And beating Bontorin, it's not like that is a great win, but at least that will get you back into fighting a top 12, top 15 guy next. So I think Kai Kara-France, these are kind of surprising, but he is the bigger name out of the two, and normally that's how Tapology
This is where the odds get interesting. Bontorin, one of the bigger movers and shakers, open to plus 175. He's at a plus 114 now. For Kara-France, he opened to minus 205. He's now minus 140. Money's coming in on Bontorin. The fans have Kara-France. Again, I set it up this way. I like Kara-France's defensive wrestling, and I like his striking output. If he can keep it on the feet, he should be able to get a win. If it gets down to the mat, again, you look at his record and it's salty, and he has a submission loss to Mark Striegel, who, listen, had a very good run on the regional scene. He hasn't lost by submission, since his last fight. But again, we were talking knockdown, this and that. Before that last fight, we're going way back to, Mark Striegel back in 2014. So we went 6 years without being finished. You got finished by Brandon Royval. Pretty good fighter. So if Bontorin gets a win here and if he submits Kai Kara-France,
oh my goodness,
that's not an easy thing to do. Again, last fight and then 6 years before that, it's a pretty hard thing to do. I expect Kara-France to get the win here, but Bontorin is a live dog in this fight.
I agree. You have to look here. Kara-France's last 2 losses just fought in a number 1 contenders fight to get a title shot. That tells you kind of where he is in this division.
And 2 judges said that he won a round in the Moreno fight.
Exactly. And honestly, just the sentiment online, a lot of people thought he did win that Moreno fight. It was a fairly close fight. Now, again, Moreno did pull ahead, of course, as the fight progressed because his cardio is absolutely insane. But that's the thing. I do think some people might be down on Kara Francis' cardio because we've seen him get tired against Moreno, but no one in the UFC can really have an output like Moreno. Yes, Max Holloway can, but he is very unique in the fact that he does that to his opponent. He likes to make them tired, then really overwhelm them with volume. I like Kara Francis in this fight. I think he has the higher ceiling in the division as well, but this is another pop and popcorn fight. Like, I do see this as, well, Bontorin gets one takedown, he can finish this fight, and if Kara Francis can keep it on the feet, he can finish it as well.
Pop and popcorn with the boys, Matt. Really looking forward to this one. We both have Don't Blink, Kai Kara France to get the win. Really looking forward to the card. I mean, of course, you have a teammate in Israel Adesanya taking on Jan Blachowicz in the main event. Nunes Anderson in a title fight between Piotr Jan and Aljamain Sterling. So keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, Matt. As we always say, let's get into it.